K-dramas are now more popular than ever, but many fans think they're being completely ruined by a ton of cliches, overused tropes, and other controversial elements that are pushing viewers away. One of the most discussed and frustrating characteristics of K-dramas is how many plot points and tropes appear over and over again without adding anything new. Many of these themes happen in romantic dramas, such as the typical story of parents or other family members disapproving of the relationship of the protagonists. While things like these often happen in real life, we don't need to see them in every show, and at this point fans are tired of this trope, with some even saying it's toxic and annoying. This element gets even more frustrating when added to another typical cliche of K-dramas, the love story between a common person and the heir of a rich family. Adding these tropes together, the idea of disapproving parents becomes linked with classist and elitist views, and that's what makes it toxic. This often results in the couple splitting up and then fighting to get back together, with the parents doing everything to keep the lovers apart from each other, only to have a sudden change of heart right at the end. This feels very unrealistic, as in real life, these problems are solved slowly over time. The disapproving rich parent trope became especially popular with dramas such as Boys Over Flowers and The Heirs, but these series aired more than 10 years ago and we're still seeing similar stories to this day, most notably in Queen of Tears. Speaking of Queen of Tears, this series got a ton of criticism for its overuse of cliches that have appeared in K-dramas way too many times. One of the most controversial of these is the story of one of the main characters having a terminal illness. What often happens in K-dramas is that at some point every problem seems to be solved, only for a sudden tragedy to strike and change everything. This tragedy often takes the form of a terminal illness, which makes the story more serious and adds another level of tension. This element is also sometimes used as a storytelling device to make the plot feel more like a rush against time. However, fans are getting tired of this trope for many reasons, but mostly it's because they're uncomfortable with some not wanting to see it explored in any way in K-dramas. Writers these days seem to be taking the easy route with this one, using the same old tricks to stir up drama and tension instead of crafting something fresh and exciting. It's starting to feel repetitive and predictable, especially in newer shows. Of course, a realistic portrayal of a serious illness could still make for an emotional story, but that's not what happens in Korean series. Quite the opposite. The diseases always seem very unrealistic, with the ill person keeping their perfect appearance to the point that it's hard to believe that they're really in pain. The terminal illness trope has recently appeared not only in Queen of Tears, but also in another one of the most popular series of this year, Love Next Door, and in both cases, the illness affected the female lead. This has caused a lot of frustration and disappointment among viewers, with many fans feeling upset that they have to see another main character with a serious disease so soon after Queen of Tears. Some said that they would stop watching after this reveal, wondering why writers can't find more unique plot twists. Netizens have called this storyline unnecessary, saying that a terminal illness plot was the last thing they wanted to see in this drama, or even in any kind of rom-com. Others went as far as to argue that K-dramas are losing viewers because of the overuse of cliches like this one. Staying on the topic of overused tropes that appear in Queen of Tears, another element that fans are tired of seeing is amnesia. Once again, a medical condition that could be very serious is used as a plot device to add a level of suspense. This often happens in love stories, with the characters confessing their feelings for each other, only for one of them to suddenly forget everything. This is already very unrealistic, but it gets even more unlikely when a simple bump on the head causes a character to forget their entire life, as sometimes happens in K-dramas. This storyline, which has appeared in series like 100 Days My Prince and Her Private Life, has been so overused that it's now almost treated as a joke. For example, in Crash Landing on You, one of the characters, a North Korean soldier, says, "If you watch South Korean dramas, 9 out of 10 are suffering from amnesia." In any case, when used seriously, this trope feels lazy and overdone, and many dramas have been ruined by useless amnesia storylines. Memory loss and terminal illnesses are only two of the common themes used by writers to create unexpected plot twists. Another overused element is the sudden reveal that the two lovers, who are apparently strangers, actually have some kind of connection in the past. In so many dramas, two people seemingly meet for the first time and then fall in love, but then it turns out that they already knew each other in the past, usually as children. This happens, for example, in Cinderella and the Four Knights and What's Wrong with Secretary Kim. This would already make for an implausible coincidence, but some K-dramas take even more steps to make the story more dramatic, often adding that one of the characters saved the other's life as a kid, like in weightlifting fairy Kim Bok-joo. While it might make for a fun story in some cases, the sudden reveal of a secret connection from the past often feels forced. Some have even pointed out that romance is actually more meaningful and relatable if two people meet and fall in love for no particular reason, with no destiny involved. Similarly, school dramas don't necessarily need violence to tell an interesting story, but it seems like nowadays every series that has teenagers as protagonists is centered around harassment and conflict. At this point, we know very well how the story goes. A new student gets into the school attended by rich kids and has to face entitled brats and a ton of harassment, with no teacher intervening to solve the problem. Just in the past 2 years, this has basically been the plot of and Rich, Pyramid Game, and Hierarchy. Many viewers are worried about how school dramas have turned from innocent romances between teenagers to depicting a lot of disturbing content that goes way beyond simple mistreatment. Also, these dramas can get even worse when they include explicit scenes, especially because the protagonists are supposed to be minors. In fact, with Netflix entering the Korean market, inappropriate scenes have become more common in all the dramas produced by the streaming platform. This aspect has disappointed a lot of fans, as many viewers gravitated towards K-dramas exactly because they were more clean than Western shows. Another unnecessary element that's appearing more and more often in K-dramas is the addition of a mystery side plot in rom-com dramas. This is once again a trope that writers use to make the connection between the lovers more deep and powerful, or even to spice up an otherwise uninteresting story. Also, writers might choose to add an element of mystery to attract more viewers who aren't interested in simple and bland rom-coms. However, many netizens have pointed out that if they're watching a rom-com, they don't expect violence and mystery, and this ruins the whole story for them. Others also argued that not every love story needs an added element of mystery, tragedy, or suspense to be meaningful. Most viewers want to see a romance develop organically between two lovers, without them having to chase some criminal and risk their lives in dangerous situations. Nevertheless, in some dramas like Summer Strike, the romance ends up being completely overshadowed by the mystery side plot, while in others, Crash Course in Romance, for example, it doesn't add anything to the story. Some have commented that both these dramas have been ruined by the unnecessary addition of a mystery side plot and would have been much better without it. Sometimes the opposite happens, and more dramatic series get ruined by a romance storyline that feels forced and useless. Probably the most notable of these is Itaewon Class, which already had a compelling plot without needing a love story. Finally, an annoying feature that has been ruining more and more K-dramas lately is how an entire show filled with twists and turns ends with a cliffhanger, leaving a lot of unanswered questions. Sometimes this is a result of K-dramas moving away from their typical TV format in which the stories were self-contained and second seasons didn't happen often. Now that many shows air on streaming platforms, some series get split into several parts, and viewers have to wait months or even years to see the end of the story. This has happened, for example, with The Glory, Hellbound, and Sweet Home, all of which were split into 2 or 3 parts. What's even worse is that some series end with a cliffhanger and no indication if there's ever going to be a second season, leaving fans confused and dissatisfied. Several dramas like Vincenzo and Extracurricular suffer from this problem, and even though many fans loved these shows up until the very end, viewers were left with questions that might never be answered. This cliffhanger ending is sometimes enough to ruin an entire show, no matter how good it was.